Ole and Sven were drinking buddies who worked as aircraft mechanics in Minneapolis, and one day the airport was fogged in and they were stuck in the hangar with nothing to do. Ole said, "I wish we had something to drink." Sven says, "Me too. You know, I hear you can drink that jet fuel and get a buzz. Do you want to try it?" So they poured themselves a couple of glasses of high-octane hooch and got completely smashed. Next morning, Ole woke up and was surprised at how good he felt. In fact, he feels great. No hangover, no bad side effects, nothing. The phone rang. It was Sven who asked, "How are you feeling this morning?" Ole says, "I feel great. How about you?" Sven says, "I feel great too. You don't have a hangover?" Ole says, "No, that jet fuel is great stuff. No hangover, nothing. We ought to do this more often." Sven agreed. "Yeah, well, but there's just one thing." Ole asked, "What's that?" Sven questioned, "Have you farted yet?" Ole stopped to think. "No." "Well, don't, because I'm in Iowa." Nicholas went to a pharmacy and said, "Hello, can you give me a condom? I'm going to my girlfriend's place for dinner, and I think I will spending the night at her house." The pharmacist gave him the condom, and as Nicholas was going out, he returned and said, "Give me another condom because my girlfriend's sister is very cute, too. She always crosses her legs in a provocative manner when she sees me, and I think I might strike luck there, too." The pharmacist gave him a second condom, and as Nicholas was leaving again, he turned back and said, "Give me one more condom because my girlfriend's mom is still pretty cute, and when she sees me, she always makes eye contact, and since she invited me for dinner, I think she is expecting me to make a move." During dinner that day, Nicholas sat with his girlfriend on the left, the sister on his right, and her girlfriend's mom facing him. When the dad walks in, Nicholas lowers his head and starts the dinner prayer. "Dear Lord, bless this dinner, and thank you for all you've given us." 10 minutes after, Nicholas was still praying, "Thank you, Lord, for your kindness." Another 10 minutes goes by, and Nicholas was still praying, keeping his head down very close to the table. They all looked at each other surprised, and his girlfriend was even more surprised than others. She gets close to him and whispers, "I didn't know you were so religious." Nicholas, with his head still on the table, replies, "I never knew your dad was the pharmacist." The photographer for a national magazine was assigned to get photos of a great forest fire. Smoke at the scene was too thick to get any good shots, so he frantically called his home office to hire a plane. "It will be waiting for you at the airport," he was assured by his editor. As soon as he got to the small rural airport, sure enough, a plane was warming up near the runway. He jumped in with his equipment and yelled, "Let's go, let's go!" The pilot swung the plane into the wind, and soon they were in the air. "Fly over the north side of the fire," said the photographer, "and make 3 or 4 low-level passes." "Why?" asked the pilot. "Because I'm going to take pictures. I'm a photographer, and photographers take pictures," said the photographer with great exasperation. After a long pause, the pilot said, "You mean you're not the instructor?" A very handsome man gets into a terrible car accident. The doctors save his life, but he loses one eye. Before a nice glass one can be fitted, he is temporarily given a wooden eye. The man becomes very depressed because of his eye loss and sits at home, moping around. Eventually, his friends come over and drag him out to a bar to try and cheer him up. While at the bar, he's still just sitting there looking depressed, not really talking. One of his friends suggests he tries to talk to a cute girl who seems alone at the bar. "No, she'll never go for a man with a wooden eye," the man says. "Okay, how about that girl over there?" his friend responds. "She has a really big nose." The man walks over to the girl and asks, "Would you like to dance?" Very excited and shocked to be asked to dance by such an attractive man, the woman responds, "Would I? Would I?" To which the man quickly responds, "Big nose, big nose." A woman was in bed with her lover when she heard her husband opening the front door. In a panic, she told her lover, "Hurry, stand in the corner, don't move until I tell you to. Just shut your eyes and pretend you're a statue." At that moment, her husband walked into the room. "What's this, honey?" he asked. "Oh, it's just a statue," she replied nonchalantly. "The Smiths bought one for their bedroom. I liked it so much I got one for us, too." They went to sleep, and then around 3 o'clock in the morning, the husband got out of bed, went to the kitchen, and came back with a sandwich and a glass of milk. "Here," he said to the statue. Eat something. I stood like an idiot at the Smith's for 3 days and nobody offered me so much as a glass of water. A woman invites her lover over while her husband is out of the house. The lover comes over and they have their fun, but before they finish, they hear someone coming up the stairs. "Oh no," the wife says, "it's my husband. Quick, find somewhere to hide until I can get you home safely." She runs into the connected bathroom and turns on the shower. The lover manages to get his underwear on before noticing that the husband is about to enter. He sweeps the rest of his clothes under the bed and dives into the closet. The husband noticed some commotion going on as he entered the room, so he started checking around to see what was going on. When he opens the closet, he sees the lover there, rifling through some coats and mumbling to himself. Hello?" the husband asks. "What are you doing?" The lover turns around nonchalantly and says, "Oh, hello, you must be the man of the house. Your wife called me over to get rid of a moth infestation in your closet." "And you're doing this in your underwear?" the husband asks. The lover looks down at his body, jumps a little bit, and says, "Damn, they work fast." 3 sisters die in a car crash. All 3 sisters make it up to heaven, where they are greeted by God himself. God opens the pearly gates to reveal ducks everywhere. God says, "Welcome to heaven." There is only one rule here. The only thing you cannot do is step on any of the ducks, so you must always watch your step. The sisters are very cautious throughout their first days there. However, the oldest sister accidentally steps on a duck. God then came walking up with this ugly man and handcuffed the man to the oldest sister. God said, "As a punishment for stepping on a duck, you will have to spend the rest of eternity with this man." The other sisters, knowing the punishment, take extra caution over the next couple of days. Unfortunately, the middle sister could not avoid it anymore and accidentally stepped on a duck. Again, God walked up and handcuffed a hideous man to the middle sister for eternity. The youngest sister made sure to always watch her step, and after about a month or so, God came walking up to her with an attractive young man and handcuffed them together. God then started to walk away when the youngest sister stopped him and said, "But God, I did not step on a duck." To which God replied, "Yes, but he did." A cabbie picks up a nun. She gets into the cab and the cab driver won't stop staring at her. She asks him why he is staring, and he replies, "I have a question to ask you, but I don't want to offend you." She answers, "My dear son, you cannot offend me. When you're as old as I am and have been a nun as long as I have, you get a chance to see and hear just about everything. I'm sure that there's nothing you could say or ask that I would find offensive, Well, I've always had a fantasy to have a nun kiss me, She responds, "Well, let's see what we can do about that. First, you have to be single, and second, you must be Catholic." The cab driver is very excited and says, "Yes, I am single, and I'm Catholic too." The nun says, "Okay, pull into the next alley." He does, and the nun fulfills his fantasy. But when they get back on the road, the cab driver starts crying. "My dear child," said the nun, "why are you crying?" "Forgive me, sister, but I have sinned. I lied, I must confess, I'm married and I'm Jewish, The nun says, "That's okay, my name is Kevin, and I'm on my way to a Halloween party." A foreigner enters a country and gets a taxi. On his way to the hotel, he points at a tall building and asks the driver, "How long did it take to build that building?" The driver responds, 2 years. 2 years. In my country, it would have taken only 2 months, the foreigner said. After a while, the foreigner again asked, "How long did it take to build that building?" Pointing at a taller building, the driver responds, 3 years. 3 years. In my country, it would have taken only 1 year, the foreigner said. Some more time passes. The foreigner again asked, "How long did it take to build that building?" Still pointing at the tallest building. The driver, feeling his country's reputation on the line, said, 1 month? The foreigner, not to be outdone, said 1 month. In my country, it would have taken only 15 days. A few minutes later, they pass by the country's tallest and most famous building. The foreigner naturally asks, "How long did it take to build that building?" The driver sighs and says, "How do I tell you this?" The foreigner looks confused and asks, "Tell me what?" The driver says, "On my way to the airport this morning, there was no building there." A young man moved from his parents' home into a new apartment of his own and went to the lobby to put his name on his mailbox. While there, an attractive young lady came out of the apartment next to the mailboxes wearing a robe. The boy smiled at the young woman and she started a conversation with him. As they talked, her robe slipped open and it was obvious that she had nothing else on. The poor kid broke into a sweat trying to maintain eye contact. After a few minutes, she placed her hand on his arm and said, "Let's go to my apartment. I hear someone coming." He followed her into her apartment. She closed the door and leaned against it, allowing her robe to fall off completely. Now completely nude, she purred at him. "What would you say is my best feature?" Flustered and embarrassed, he finally squeaked, "It's got to be your ears." Astounded and a little hurt, she asked, "My ears? Look at these breasts. They are full and 100% natural. I work out every day and my butt is firm and solid. Look at my skin, no blemishes anywhere. So how can you think that the best part of my body is my ears?" Clearing his throat, he stammered, "Outside. When you said you heard someone coming, that was me." A professor at the University of Kentucky was giving a lecture on the supernatural. To get a feel for his audience, he asks, "How many people here believe in ghosts?" About 90 students raise their hands. "Well, that's a good start. Out of those of you who believe in ghosts, do any of you think you've seen a ghost?" About 40 students raise their hands. "That's really good. I'm really glad you take this seriously. Has anyone here ever talked to a ghost?" About 15 students raise their hands. "Has anyone here ever touched a ghost?" 3 students raise their hands. "That's fantastic. Now let me ask you one question further. Have any of you ever made love to a ghost?" Way in the back, Bubba raises his hand. The professor takes off his glasses and says, "Son, all the years I've been giving this lecture, no one has ever claimed to have made love to a ghost. You've got to come up here and tell us about your experience." The student replied with a nod and a grin and began to make his way up to the podium. When he reached the front of the room, the professor asks, "So, Bubba, tell us what it's like to have sex with a ghost?" Bubba replied, "Shit! From way back there, I thought you said goats." 2 old friends were just about to tee off at the first hole of their local golf course when a chap carrying a golf bag called out to them, "Do you mind if I join you? My partner didn't turn up." "Sure," they said. "You're welcome." So they started playing and enjoyed the game and the company of the newcomer. Partway around the course, one of the friends asked the newcomer, "What do you do for a living?" He replied, "I'm a hitman." "You're joking," was the response. "No, I'm not." Reaching into his golf bag, pulling out a beautiful sniper's rifle with a large telescopic sight. "Here are my tools." "That's a beautiful telescopic sight," said the other friend. "Can I take a look? Think I might be able to see my house from here." So he picked up the rifle and looked through the sight in the direction of his house. "Yeah, I can see my house all right. This sight is fantastic. I can see right in the window. Wow, I can see my wife in the bedroom. Ha, I can see she's naked." "What's that? Wait a minute, that's my neighbor in there with her. He's naked as well." "The bitch." He turned to the hitman. "How much do you charge for a hit?" "I do a flat rate for you, $1,000 every time I pull the trigger. Can you do 2 for me now?" "Sure, what do you want?" "First, shoot my wife. She's always been mouthy, so shoot her in the mouth. Then the neighbor. He's a friend of mine, so just shoot his dick off to teach him a lesson." The hitman took the rifle and took aim, standing perfectly still for a few minutes. "Are you going to do it or not?" said the friend impatiently. "Just wait a moment. Be patient," said the hitman calmly. "I think I can save you $1,000 here." The IRS sends their auditor, a nasty little man, to audit a synagogue. The auditor is doing all the checks and then turns to the rabbi and says, "I noticed that you buy a lot of candles." "Yes," answered the rabbi. "Well, Rabbi, what do you do with the candle drippings?" he asked. "A good question," noted the rabbi. "We actually save them up. When we have enough, we send them back to the candle maker, and every now and then they send us a free box of candles." "Oh," replied the auditor, somewhat disappointed that his question actually had a practical answer. So he thought he'd try another question in his obnoxious way. "Rabbi, what about all these matzah purchases? What do you do with the crumbs from the matzah?" Yes," replied the rabbi calmly. "We actually collect up the crumbs. We send them in a box back to the manufacturer, and every now and then they send a free box of matzo balls." "Oh," replied the auditor, thinking hard about how to fluster the rabbi. "Well, Rabbi," he went on, "what do you do with all the foreskins from the circumcisions?" "Yes, here too we do not waste," answered the rabbi. "What we do is save up all the foreskins, and when we have enough, we actually send them to the IRS. "To the IRS?" questioned the auditor in disbelief. "Ah, yes," replied the rabbi, "directly to the IRS. And about once a year, they send us a little prick like you." An atheist was seated next to a little girl on an airplane, and he turned to her and said, "Do you want to talk? Flights go quicker if you strike up a conversation with your fellow passenger." The little girl, who had just started to read her book, replied to the total stranger, "What would you want to talk about?" "Oh, I don't know," said the atheist. "How about why there is no God, or no heaven, or hell, or no life after death?" as he smiled smugly. "Okay," she said. "Those could be interesting topics, but let me ask you a question first. A horse, a cow, and a deer all eat the same stuff, grass. Yet a deer excretes little pellets, while a cow turns out a flat patty, but a horse produces clumps. Why do you suppose that is?" The atheist, visibly surprised by the little girl's intelligence, thinks about it and says, I have no idea," to which the little girl replies, "Do you really feel qualified to discuss God, heaven, and hell, or life after death when you don't know shit?" And then she went back to reading her book. A blind man went to the hospital for an eye operation. After the procedure was completed, the doctor checked on him and asked, "Can you see now?" The man shook his head and said, "No, doc, I still can't see anything." The doctor, trying to figure out the issue, jokingly said, "Let's try something unusual." He called the nurse over and asked her to remove her clothes. "Can you see anything now?" The man paused for a moment and replied, "No, still nothing." A woman is walking through the park when she sees a very attractive man sitting on a park bench. He's reading a book and eating some fruit out of a Tupperware container. Slowly, the woman gathers the courage to go ask the man out. So she walks over and takes a seat next to him on the bench, turns to him and says, "Sorry to bother you. I know this may be a little forward, but I would love to grab coffee with you sometime." Flattered, the man responds, "Sure, but what makes you so certain you and I would get along so well?" "Well," the woman says, "a couple things, actually. I noticed you were wearing an Iron Maiden t-shirt. Iron Maiden is my favorite band of all time. When they went on their reunion tour in 1999, my parents took me to see them in Cleveland. I was 12 years old. It was the first concert I ever went to. I absolutely love Iron Maiden." The man can't believe it. "I saw them play Cleveland in '99, first concert I ever went to on my own. My best friend Jimmy Spitz and I told our parents we were sleeping at each other's houses, snuck out, took a bus into the city, and saw them play at the Plain Dealer Pavilion. Naturally, they're both shocked." "If that isn't weird enough," says the woman, "I noticed you're reading Mark Twain. I was a communications major in university, and I actually wrote my thesis on Mark Twain, on how he used satire as a lens to comment on current events of the time, comparing him to satirical news sources of today. He's my favorite author." Now the man is really taken aback. "Get out of here. I was an English major in university. I specialized in 19th century American literature. This is like my 4th or 5th time reading Tom Sawyer. I absolutely love Mark Twain." They both can't believe it. This has got to be a match made in heaven. "Okay," the woman says. "Well, buckle up, because here's the icing on the cake. I noticed you're eating a prune. Prunes are my absolute favorite fruit. When I was a kid, my grandfather lived on a farm. He had an orchard that mainly grew apples and some lemons, but he knew how much my sister and I loved prunes, so he kept a couple of plum trees. Every year at the end of the summer, we'd go up and harvest the plums with him. He'd dry them, and by the time we'd go back to his place for Thanksgiving, he'd always have those prunes saved just for us. They're my favorite fruit. I love prunes. You're eating a prune. This has got to be fate. What do you say? The man puts down his fruit and responds, "It's a date." A cop was patrolling late at night in a well-known lover's spot, famous for all obscene activities. He sees a couple in a car with the interior light brightly glowing. The cop carefully approaches the car to get a closer look. Then he sees a young man behind the wheel reading a computer magazine. He immediately notices a young woman in the rear seat knitting. Puzzled by this surprising situation, the cop walks to the car and gently raps on the driver's window. The young man lowers his window. Yes, officer." The cop says, "What are you doing?" The young man says, "Well, officer, I'm reading a magazine." Pointing towards the young woman in the back seat, the cop says, "And her, what is she doing?" The young man shrugs. "Sir, I believe she's knitting a pullover sweater." Now the cop is totally confused. A young couple alone in a car at night in a lover's lane, and nothing obscene is happening. The cop asks, "What's your age, young man?" The young man says, "I'm 22, sir." The cop asks, "And her? What's her age?" The young man looks at his watch and replies, "She'll be 18 in 11 minutes. Dear Redditors, I really need your advice on what could be a crucial decision. I've suspected for some time now that my wife has been cheating on me. The usual signs, the phone rings, but if I answer, the caller hangs up. My wife has been going out with the girls a lot recently, although when I ask their names, she always says, "Just some friends from work, you don't know them." I sometimes stay awake to look out for a cab coming home, but she always comes walking up the drive as I hear the sound of a car around the corner, as if she has gotten out and walked the rest of the way. Why? Maybe she wasn't in a taxi at all? I once picked up her cell phone just to see what time it was. This caused her to go completely berserk. She quickly snatched the phone out of my hand and cursed me hysterically, screaming that I should never touch her personal property, then accused me of trying to spy on her. Anyway, I have never broached the subject with my wife. I think deep down, I just didn't want to know the truth, but last night she went out again and I decided to really check on her. I decided I was going to park my Harley-Davidson lowrider next to the garage and then hide behind it so I could get a good view of the street around the corner when she came home. It was at that moment, crouching behind my motorcycle, that I noticed a small amount of motor oil leaking through the gasket between the rear head and rocker arm cover. So, is this something I can easily repair myself, or do you think I should take it back to the dealer? Two young men stand before a judge after being arrested for drug use. The judge looks them over and says, "You both seem like decent guys, so I'm giving you a second chance. Instead of jail, I want you to spend the weekend convincing others to stay off drugs. On Monday, I expect results, or you're going straight to prison." Monday arrives, and the judge calls up the first guy. "How did you do?" "Your Honor, I convinced 17 people to quit drugs forever." 17? That's fantastic. How?" "I used a simple diagram. I drew two circles, O. Then I told them, the big circle is your brain before drugs, and the small one is your brain after drugs." The judge nods approvingly and turns to the second guy. "And you? How did you do?" The second guy grins. "Your Honor, I convinced 156 people to quit drugs forever." The judge's eyes widen. 156? That's incredible. What did you say?" "I used the same idea, Your Honor. I drew two circles, O. Then I pointed to the little one and said, 'This is your sphincter before prison.'" A farmer takes his truck in for repairs, but the local mechanic can't fix it right away. Since he doesn't live far, the farmer decides to walk home. On his way, he stops at the hardware store to buy a bucket and a gallon of paint. Then he heads to the feed store and picks up a couple of chickens and a goose. Now, struggling with his purchases, he thinks to himself, "How am I going to carry all this home?" Just then, a little old lady approaches him and asks, "Excuse me, can you tell me how to get to 1603 Mockingbird Lane?" The farmer replies, "Well, my farm is close to that house. I'd walk you there, but I'm struggling to carry all this stuff." The little old lady smiles and suggests, Why don't you put the paint in the bucket, carry the bucket in one hand, tuck a chicken under each arm, and carry the goose in the other hand? The farmer thanks her and follows her advice. As they walk, he says, "Let's take this shortcut down the alley. We'll be there in no time." The old lady looks at him suspiciously and says, "I'm a lonely widow, without a husband to protect me. How do I know you won't hold me up against the wall and have your way with me in this alley?" The farmer, shocked, replies, "What in the world? I'm carrying a bucket, a gallon of paint, 2 chickens, and a goose. How could I possibly do that?" The old lady, with a smirk, says, "Well, if you were going to do such a thing, you'd set the goose down, cover him with the bucket, place the paint on top of the bucket, and I'd hold the chickens." A young couple had recently married, and after 3 months, the wife went for a checkup. The doctor smiled and said, "Congratulations, you're pregnant." She was thrilled, until the doctor added, "However, due to a rare complication, you must avoid sex until after the baby is born." She went home and broke the news to her husband. He reluctantly agreed to hold out, but after a month, he was struggling. "Please, honey, just once," he begged. "I know it's hard for you," she said sympathetically. "Here, take $100 and go to a sex worker. I just want you to be happy." The husband was touched. What a thoughtful wife, he thought, taking the money and heading out the door with a spring in his step. As he reached the first floor, the neighbor's wife saw him grinning. "Why so happy?" she asked. Excited, he explained the whole situation. She smirked and said, "Why waste time looking for a sex worker? Give me the $100 and I'll take care of you." Seemed like a great deal, so he handed over the money, they had their fun, and he returned home. His wife, surprised to see him back so soon, asked, "What happened? Did you change your mind?" He shrugged. "Not exactly. The neighbor saw me leaving, and when I told her, she offered to do it for the $100 instead, so I took her up on it." His wife's face turned red. "That jerk, when she was pregnant, I did her husband for free." A few decades ago, a restaurant made a bold claim. "We'll serve you anything you want. If we can't, we'll pay you $5,000. A skeptical man passing by sees the sign and thinks, "Yeah, right." Determined to call their bluff, he steps inside and takes a seat. The waiter approaches. "Good evening, sir. What would you like to eat?" The man smirks. "I'll have an elephant's ear and a muffin." The waiter, unfazed, nods. "Give us just a moment." He heads to the kitchen. As the minutes pass, the man grows confident. No way they can pull this off. Easy money. Then the waiter returns, looking slightly anxious. "Apologies, sir, but may I ask which type of elephant you'd like the ear from?" The man blinks. "Wait. What?" His confidence wavers. An Indian elephant, I guess?" "Thank you, sir," the waiter says and heads back. A minute later, he returns. "And which ear would you prefer, left or right?" Now the man is sweating. Left?" "Excellent choice," the waiter replies, disappearing into the kitchen again. Now full-on panicking, the man imagines the catastrophic bill he's about to face. 5 minutes later, the waiter reappears, holding a platter and a stack of cash. He sets both on the table with a polite smile. "Here's your $5,000, sir. Apologies, but we're out of muffins." A woman walks into Bass Pro Shop to buy a fishing rod and reel for her grandson's birthday. Not knowing much about fishing gear, she randomly picks one and heads to the counter. Behind the register stands a store associate wearing dark sunglasses. "Excuse me, sir," she says. "Can you tell me anything about this rod and reel?" The man smiles. "Ma'am, I'm completely blind, but if you drop it on the counter, I can tell you everything just by the sound." Skeptical but curious, she sets it down. The associate tilts his head and says, "That's a 6-foot Shakespeare graphite rod with a Zebco 404 reel and 10-pound test line. A great all-around combo, and lucky for you, it's on sale this week for $20. Amazed, she exclaims, "That's incredible! You really can tell just from the sound? I'll take it." As she reaches for her purse, her credit card slips from her hand and lands on the floor. "That sounds like a MasterCard," the man notes. Impressed, she bends down to pick it up and accidentally lets out a little toot. Mortified, she freezes, but then she relaxes. He's blind, right? No way he knows it was me. The clerk rings up the sale. "That'll be $34.50, ma'am." She frowns. "Wait a minute. I thought you said it was $20. Yes, ma'am, he replies. The rod and reel are $20, but the duck call is $11 and the bear repellent is $3.50. She pays the bill without another word.